Kevin had just gotten a new car and was out for a drive when he accidentally cut off a truck driver. Truck driver motioned for Kevin to pull over. When Kevin did, the driver got out of his truck and pulled a piece of chalk from his pocket. He drew a circle on the side of the road and gruffly commanded to Kevin, "Stand in that circle and don't move." He then went to Kevin's car and cut up its leather seats. When he turned around, Kevin had a slight grin on his face, so the driver said, "Oh, you think that's funny? Watch this." He gets a bat out of his truck and breaks every window in Kevin's car. When he turns and looks at Kevin, he has a smile on his face. Driver is getting really mad. He gets his knife back out and slices all its tires. Now Kevin is laughing. The truck driver is really starting to lose it. He goes back to his truck and gets a can of petrol, pours it on Kevin's car, and sets it on fire. He turns around, and Kevin is laughing so hard he is about to fall down. "What's so funny?" the truck driver asked. Kevin replied, "Every time you weren't looking, I stepped outside the circle." When I was learning to drive in the winter, my dad told me, "If you're ever lost in the snow, wait for a plow truck, then follow it." One cold, snowy Minnesota night, I got lost on the way home. The snow was blowing so fast and piling up so high, I couldn't see any street signs. With no map in my car and a dead cell phone, I thought I might be stranded, so I pulled over to the side of the road. Then, breaking through the flurries, I saw the headlights of a plow truck in my rearview mirror. Thanking my lucky stars, I turned in and followed the truck, hopeful that it would lead me back somewhere I recognized. I followed that truck for what felt like hours. He turned left, I'd turn left, he'd swing to the right, and I was right on his tail. After a while, I saw brake lights from the plow, followed by four-way flashers. The plow had stopped, and I saw the driver get out and approach my car. I rolled down the window to talk to him. "Why are you following me, kid?" the plow driver asked. "Well, sir, my dad told me if I was ever lost in a snowstorm, I should wait for a plow truck and then follow it." "Well," said the plow driver, "I just finished clearing the Target parking lot. Want to follow me over to Best Buy?" A policeman is driving past a roadside apple stand when he notices the sign, "Apple seeds, guaranteed to make you smarter, $20 per seed." He pulls over and informs the vendor that it is fraud and false advertising to make absurd claims like this. "No, no, no," the vendor tells the cop. "My apples are a special variety, a scientific miracle. Buy just one seed, eat it, and you will notice an increase in intelligence. If not, I promise to refund your $20. "All right," says the cop, "but if this doesn't work, I'm shutting your operation down." He hands over a $20 bill, takes the seed, chews it up, and waits for it to kick in. After a few moments, he says, "You know, even if you're not lying, I could have bought a whole bag of your apples and had enough seeds to last me months." "Ah, yes," says the vendor. "It's working already." A long time ago, a wealthy man was having an affair with an Italian woman. One night, during one of their secret meetings, she tearfully confessed, "I'm pregnant." Not wanting to jeopardize his marriage or reputation, he offered her a large sum of money to go to Italy and have the child. He promised to send child support until the child turned 18, if she stayed quiet. Worried, she asked, "But how will you know when the baby is born?" He thought for a moment and said, "Just mail me a postcard and write spaghetti on the back. I'll take care of the rest." She agreed and left for Italy. 9 months later, the man came home to find his wife holding a postcard, a puzzled look on her face. "Honey," she said, "you got the strangest postcard today." Trying to stay calm, he replied, "Oh, just give it to me. I'll explain later." He took one look at the card, turned pale, and fainted on the spot. Confused, his wife picked up the postcard and read aloud, "Spaghetti, spaghetti, spaghetti, 2 with meatballs, 1 without." A factory timekeeper is responsible for blowing the whistle at exactly noon for the lunch break. Every day she watches the second hand tick down, and the moment it strikes 12, she sounds the whistle. One day, she accidentally bumps her watch against a machine and worries that it might be running a little fast or slow. Wanting to be precise, she visits the local clockmaker to have it adjusted. She explains her job and how important it is for her watch to be accurate. The clockmaker reassures her, saying, "No need to worry. I set your watch by the clocks in the back, and I'm certain they're accurate." I adjust them every Sunday when the church bells ring at exactly 6 a.m. Satisfied, she leaves the shop. But then a thought hits her. How does the church know it's exactly 6 a.m.? Curious, she visits the church and asks the bell ringer how he ensures the bells ring at the correct time. The bell ringer smiles and says, "Oh, that's easy. I check my watch every day at noon when the factory whistle blows." Some people embrace aging with grace while others fight it every step of the way. Andy's wife, Linda, was firmly in the second camp. Determined to defy the passage of time, she went on a shopping spree and returned home with an entire arsenal of expensive miracle beauty products, each one promising to turn back the clock. After spending nearly an hour in front of the mirror, dabbing, patting, and blending, she finally admired her reflection. Flawless. Feeling confident, she turned to Andy, who was casually flipping through the newspaper. "Darling," she purred, striking a pose. "Be honest, if you didn't know me, what age would you say I am?" Andy glanced up and studied her carefully. "Well," he said thoughtfully, "judging by your skin, I'd say 20, your hair, 18, and your figure, maybe 25. Linda beamed. "Oh, you flatterer," she gushed, ready to shower him with affection. But just as she leaned in, Andy held up a hand. "Whoa, hold on there, sweetheart," he said. "I haven't added them up yet." John had always struggled to remember important dates, especially his wife Sarah's birthday and their anniversary. After years of forgetting, followed by nights spent sleeping on the couch, he finally came up with a foolproof plan. He opened an account with a florist, provided them with the special dates, and arranged for flowers to be delivered every year like clockwork. Each bouquet would arrive with a heartfelt note signed, "Your loving husband." It was perfect. No more last-minute panic, no more icy glares from Sarah, just effortless romance, and for a while it worked beautifully. Every year, Sarah's eyes would light up when the flowers arrived. "Oh, John," she would sigh, hugging him. "You're so thoughtful." John would smile proudly, secretly relieved that he'd outsmarted his own forgetfulness. But then, one evening, John walked through the front door, kissed Sarah on the cheek, and casually remarked, "Nice flowers, honey. Where'd you get them?" A man was fishing at his favorite spot, even though it had recently become illegal. Undeterred, he spent 2 hours there, filling his bucket with fish. Just as he was about to call it a day, a police officer appeared. "You know fishing here is illegal, right?" the officer said. "I'm gonna have to fine you or maybe even arrest you." Thinking quickly, the man hid his fishing rod and smiled. "Oh, officer, you've got it all wrong. These aren't just any fish, they're my pets." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Your pets?" "Yep, every week I bring them here to swim. Once they've had their fun, I whistle and they jump right back into the bucket. Then I take them home." The officer smirked, clearly not buying it. "All right, show me. If they really come back, I'll let you go." "No problem." The man tipped the bucket, letting all the fish swim away into the pond. They stood there in silence for a few moments. Finally, the officer crossed his arms. "Well, when are they jumping back in?" The man shrugged. "What fish?" Joe grew up in a town so tiny the welcome sign didn't bother with welcome. It just said, "Hi." After escaping to the big city for college and law school, he returned home with a dream. In a place this small, being slightly impressive made you a local legend. He'd be the legal eagle of Mayberry, the courtroom king of cornfields. He opened a law office, leather chairs, framed diplomas, and one of those fancy pens you never actually use. He had everything, except clients. Then one day, a miracle. A man walked briskly toward the front door. Joe's heart nearly burst from excitement. His first client. Showtime. Thinking fast, Joe grabbed his dead phone and launched into the performance of his life. A full-blown, Oscar-worthy monologue worthy of Law and Order. Delusional intent. "No, tell the Wall Street guys I don't do discounts," he barked. "$1 million minimum, or I walk. Yes, I'll be in court next week. Lead counsel, obviously. My associates, they're the backup dancers. I'm the Beyoncé of litigation. And someone warn the DA. I can squeeze him in between saving democracy and lunch." 5 minutes of pure, undiluted bluffing. He finally hung up, turned to the visitor with a dazzling grin, and said, "Sorry about the wait. Things are a little hectic today. What can I do for you?" The man blinked. I'm from the phone company. I'm here to install your line. The whole family was seated around the table as the food was being served. The delicious aroma of Grandma's cooking filled the room, and little Logan couldn't wait to eat. As soon as his plate was set in front of him, he grabbed his fork and started digging in. "Logan, wait until we say our prayer," his mom reminded him. Logan barely looked up, continuing to eat. "I don't have to," he mumbled between bites. His mom raised an eyebrow. "Of course you do. We always say a prayer before eating." Logan swallowed and shrugged. "That's at our house," he said seriously. "But this is Grandma's house, and she already knows how to cook." Laughter erupted around the table, and even Grandma chuckled as she ruffled Logan's hair. "Well," she said with a twinkle in her eye, "I guess that's the best compliment a cook can get." Still, Logan's dad cleared his throat and held out his hands. "Nice try, buddy. We're still saying grace." Logan sighed, put down his fork, and folded his hands. "Fine, but I'm thanking God extra for Grandma's mashed potatoes." A duck waddles into a convenience store and strolls up to the counter. "Got any grapes?" he asks. The clerk shakes his head. "Nope, no grapes here." The duck quacks a quick "thanks" and waddles out. The next day, the duck returns. "Got any grapes?" The clerk sighs. "No, I told you yesterday, we don't sell grapes." The duck shrugs and waddles away. On the third day, the duck is back again. "Got any grapes?" Now the clerk is fuming. "Listen, buddy, you've asked me 3 days in a row, and I keep telling you, no grapes! If you ask me again, I'll nail your little webbed feet to the floor." The duck blinks, nods, and waddles out. The next day, the duck returns. He eyes the clerk and asks, "Got any nails?" The clerk, still annoyed, grumbles. "No, we don't have nails." The duck grins. "Good. Got any grapes?" A lady, about 8 months pregnant, got on a bus and noticed the man across from her smiling. Feeling a little awkward, she moved to another seat. But the man's smile turned into a grin, so she moved again. The man seemed more amused with each move. By the 4th time she shifted, he burst out laughing. Feeling uncomfortable, she complained to the bus driver, and the man was arrested. In court, the judge asked the man to explain himself. He said, "Well, Your Honor, when she first got on the bus, I noticed her condition. She sat under a sign that said, 'The double mint twins are coming,' and I grinned. Then she moved and sat under a sign that said, 'Slogan's liniment will reduce the swelling,' and I smiled. But when she sat under a sign that said, 'William's big stick did the trick,' I could hardly contain myself. And, Your Honor, when she moved to a seat under a sign that said, 'Goodyear rubber could have prevented this accident,' I just lost it." A nurse was on duty in the emergency room when a young woman with purple hair styled into a punk rocker mohawk, sporting a variety of tattoos and wearing strange clothing, entered the ER. It was quickly determined that the patient had acute appendicitis, so she was scheduled for immediate surgery. When she was completely disrobed on the operating table, the staff noticed that her pubic hair had been dyed green, and above it, there was a tattoo that read, "Keep off the grass." Once the surgery was completed, the surgeon wrote a short note on the patient's dressing that said, "Sorry, had to mow the lawn." My wife had been after me for several weeks to varnish the wooden seat on our toilet. Finally, I got around to doing it while she was out shopping. After finishing, I left to take care of another matter before she returned. She came home and prepared to take a shower. Before getting in the shower, she got undressed and then sat on the toilet. As she tried to stand up, she realized that the not-quite-dry epoxy paint had glued her to the toilet seat. About that time, I got home and realized her predicament. We both pushed and pulled without any success whatsoever. Finally, in desperation, I undid the toilet seat bolts. She wrapped a sheet around herself, and I drove her to the hospital emergency room. The doctor got her into a position where he could study how to free her. Try to get a mental picture of this. My wife tried to lighten the embarrassment of it all by saying, "Well, doctor, I'll bet you've never seen anything like this before." The doctor replied, "Actually, I've seen lots of them. I just never saw one mounted and framed." A 17-year-old boy who works part-time at Pizza Hut drives up to park in front of the house in a beautiful Porsche. Naturally, his parents know that there's no way he earned enough with his after-school job to buy such a car. "Where did you get that car?" his mom and dad screamed in shock. "I bought it today," replied the teen calmly. "With what money, young man?" his mom demands. "We know how much a Porsche costs, and you cannot afford it." "Well, it's used, and I got a good deal," says the boy. "This one cost me $20. "Who on earth would sell a car like that for $20? "The woman up the street," the boy replies. "I don't know her name, she just moved in. She ordered a pizza, and when I delivered it to her, she asked me if I wanted to buy a Porsche for $20. The boy's dad and mom hurry over to their new neighbor's house, ready to demand an explanation. Curiously, their new neighbor is calmly planting flowers in her front yard. "I'm the father of the kid you just sold a sports car to for $20, the dad says. "I need an explanation from you." "Well," the woman says, not looking up from her garden. "This morning I got a phone call from my husband. I thought he was on a business trip in Florida, but it seems he has run off to Hawaii with his secretary and doesn't intend to come back. What on earth does that have to do with selling our son a Porsche for $20? The boy's mom asks, utterly perplexed. The new neighbor smiles very big and pauses for a minute. "Well, my husband asked me to sell his new Porsche and send him the money, so I did." Paul had always considered himself a reasonable man, but lately he couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that his wife, Lisa, was up to something. She'd been coming home late, smiling at her phone a little too much, and humming songs he didn't recognize. Consumed by doubt, he did what any overly suspicious husband would do. He hired a private detective. "I don't just want a report," Paul told the investigator. "I need video proof. I need to see it with my own eyes." A week later, the detective returned holding a flash drive. "You might want to sit down for this," he said grimly. Paul's stomach churned as he plugged the drive into his laptop. The grainy footage began to play. There was Lisa meeting a man in the park. They laughed together, their faces beaming. Then the scene changed. The two were sipping coffee at an outdoor cafe, leaning in close, lost in conversation. Cut to them twirling on a dance floor in a dimly lit nightclub, their movements light and carefree. Scene after scene played, her smiling, her laughing, her enjoying every moment with this mystery man. Paul's jaw tightened, his fingers curled into fists. He shook his head in disbelief. I just can't believe this," he muttered, his voice full of despair. The detective, glancing at him, nodded sympathetically. "What's not to believe? It's all right there on the screen." Paul exhaled and leaned back in his chair. "I can't believe my wife could be so much fun." There he was on the side of the highway, sweating under the afternoon sun, struggling to change a stubborn flat tire. His face was flushed, his hands were covered in grease, and his once white shirt now looked like an abstract painting of smudges and sweat. His tie hung loose, a casualty of his increasing frustration. Standing beside him was his wife, Claire, immaculate as always. Not a hair out of place, her crisp blouse untouched by the grime of the situation. But what she lacked in physical involvement, she made up for in guidance. "You're turning it the wrong way," she insisted. "I think that Jack should go a little more to the left. Are you sure that's tight enough? It doesn't look tight enough." Jake exhaled sharply and wiped his forehead, only to smear more grease across his face. Just then, a kind-hearted motorist pulled over and stepped out. "Hey there," the stranger said. "Looks like you're having some trouble. I've changed plenty of tires. Maybe I can lend a hand?" Jake looked up, eyes filled with exhaustion and silent desperation. Then he motioned toward his wife. "You sure can," he said, his voice heavy with defeat. "My wife is an expert, too. If you could just do all the arguing with her about how this tire should be changed, I'll focus on getting the job done." A man was sitting in his favorite chair, peacefully reading the newspaper, when, whack! His wife smacked him over the head with a frying pan. Stars danced in his vision as he clutched his head. "What the hell was that for?" he demanded. His wife stood over him, arms crossed, her face a mix of fury and suspicion. I found a piece of paper in your pants pocket with the name Jenny on it, she snapped. The man blinked, then sighed in relief. Oh, honey, last week at the races, Jenny was the name of the horse I bet on. His wife squinted at him for a moment, then, realizing her mistake, lowered the pan. Oh, I see, I'm so sorry, she said sweetly before going back to her chores. 3 days passed. The man was lounging on the couch watching TV when suddenly, wham! His wife clobbered him with an even bigger frying pan, knocking him clean out. When he finally came to, groggy and dazed, he looked up at her in horror. What the hell now? She glared down at him, hands on her hips. Your horse called. Mary sat across from the doctor, wringing her hands. Doctor, I don't know what to do. My husband's temper is out of control. Every day he just snaps over the smallest things. It's really starting to scare me. The doctor nodded sympathetically. I see. How bad does it get? Well, she sighed. Yesterday, I accidentally left a spoon in the sink, and you'd think I'd set the house on fire. The day before, he got mad because the remote was on the coffee table instead of the armrest. It's like living with a ticking time bomb. The doctor leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin. I think I have just the cure for that. Mary sat up eagerly. Really? What is it? The doctor smiled. It's simple. The next time your husband starts getting angry, pour yourself a glass of water. Take a sip and start swishing it around in your mouth. Keep swishing and don't swallow until he either calms down, leaves the room, or goes to bed. Mary blinked. That's it? Just water? Just water, the doctor assured her. 2 weeks later, Mary returned to the clinic looking fresh, relaxed, and almost glowing. Doctor, you are a genius, she gushed. Every time my husband started getting angry, I swished with water. I swished, and like magic, he calmed right down. No yelling, no fighting, no broken dishes. How does a simple glass of water do that? The doctor chuckled. The water itself does nothing. It's having to keep your mouth shut that does the trick. Linda Burnett, 23, a resident of San Diego, was visiting her laws. And while there, she went to a nearby supermarket to pick up some groceries. Several people noticed her sitting in her car with the windows rolled up and with her eyes closed, with both hands behind the back of her head. One customer who had been at the store for a while became concerned and walked over to the car. He noticed that Linda's eyes were now open, and she looked very strange. He asked her if she was okay, and Linda replied that she'd been shot in the back of the head and had been holding her brains in for over an hour. The man called the paramedics, who broke into the car because the doors were locked, and Linda refused to remove her hands from her head. When they finally got in, they found that Linda had a wad of bread dough on the back of her head. A Pillsbury biscuit canister had exploded from the heat, making a loud noise that sounded like a gunshot, and the wad of dough hit her in the back of her head. When she reached back to find out what it was, she felt the dough and thought it was her brains. She initially passed out, but she quickly recovered and tried to hold her brains in for over an hour until someone noticed and came to her aid. And yes, Linda is a blonde. An old hillbilly farmer had a wife who nagged him unmercifully. From morning till night, she was always complaining about something. The only time he got any relief was when he was out plowing with his old mule. He tried to plow a lot. One day, when he was out plowing, his wife brought him lunch in the field. He drove the old mule into the shade, sat down on a stump, and began to eat his lunch. Immediately, his wife began nagging him again. Complain, nag, it just went on and on. All of a sudden, the old mule lashed out with both hind feet and caught her smack in the back of the head, killed her dead on the spot. At the funeral several days later, the minister noticed something rather odd. When a woman mourner would, when he approached the old farmer, he would listen for a minute, then nod his head in agreement. But when a male mourner approached him, he would listen for a minute, then shake his head in disagreement. This was so consistent, the minister decided to ask the old farmer about it. So after the funeral, the minister spoke to the old farmer and asked him why he nodded his head and agreed with the women, but always shook his head and disagreed with all the men. The old farmer said, "Well, The women would come up and say something about how nice my wife looked or how pretty her dress was, so I'd nod my head in agreement. "And what about the men?" the minister asked. They wanted to know if the mule was for sale. Two attorneys boarded a flight out of Seattle, ready to settle in for the journey. One took the window seat, the other the middle. Just as they buckled in, a physician arrived and claimed the aisle seat beside them. He kicked off his shoes, wiggled his toes, and leaned back with a contented sigh. A few minutes later, the attorney by the window stretched and said, "I think I'll get up and grab a Coke." Before he could move, the physician smiled and said, "No need, I'll get it for you." As soon as the doctor walked away, the other attorney smirked, picked up one of the physician's shoes, and spat inside it. His companion chuckled, but said nothing. Moments later, the physician returned, handed over the Coke, and settled back into his seat. "That looks good," the second attorney said. "I think I'll have one too." "Of course," the physician replied cheerfully, standing up once more to fetch another drink. As soon as he disappeared down the aisle, the first attorney seized the opportunity, picked up the doctor's other shoe, and spat in it. When the physician returned with the second Coke, the attorneys sat back, sipping their drinks and exchanging satisfied glances. The flight continued without incident, and all seemed well. But as the plane descended for landing, the physician calmly slid his feet into his shoes. He barely flinched as he felt the dampness inside. Instead, he took a deep breath, looked straight ahead, and sighed. "How long?" he asked, shaking his head. "How long must this pointless war between our professions continue? The bitterness, the rivalry, the endless pranks." He paused dramatically before adding, "The spitting in shoes and the pissing in Cokes." An American, a Scot, and a Canadian were driving down a winding road when tragedy struck. A terrible accident sent their car skidding off the highway. The crash was fatal, and by the time they reached the emergency room, all three had been declared dead. But just as the doctors were about to place a toe tag on the American, he gasped, coughed, and opened his eyes. The room fell silent in shock. One of the doctors rushed forward. "You were gone! What happened?" The American took a deep breath and sat up. "Well," he began, "I remember the crash. And then this warm, beautiful light. The next thing I knew, the Canadian, the Scot, and I were standing at the gates of heaven." The doctors and nurses listened in awe as he continued. "St. Peter came up to us and said we were all too young to die. He told us there was a way to return to Earth, but it required a $50 donation. So, what did you do?" a nurse asked. The American shrugged. "I pulled out my wallet, handed over the $50, and bam! Next thing I know, I'm back here." The doctors exchanged amazed glances. "Incredible. But what happened to the other two?" The American sighed. "Last I saw them, the Scot was still haggling over the price, and the Canadian was waiting for the government to cover his." One evening, a curious young boy sat beside his father and asked, "Daddy, how was I born?" His father sighed, put down his newspaper, and smiled knowingly. "Ah, my boy, I suppose you'd find out sooner or later. Let me put it in terms your generation will understand." The boy leaned in, eager for an answer. "Well," his dad began, "your mother and I met in a chat room. After exchanging a few flirty emails, I finally gathered the courage to ask her out on a date. We met at a cyber cafe, very romantic, mind you." The boy nodded, intrigued. "Things escalated quickly. We snuck away to a private chat and, well, let's just say your mother downloaded from my memory stick." The boy looked puzzled. "Downloaded?" His dad cleared his throat. "Yes, and before we knew it, I was ready to upload. But here's where we made a critical mistake. We forgot to use a firewall." The boy's eyes widened. "By the time we realized there was no delete button, it was too late. And 9 months later, boom, you arrived, our little blessed virus." The boy sat in stunned silence, his mind spinning. "Wait, am I some kind of computer program?" His father chuckled. "No, son. But trust me, you caused just as many system crashes in your first few years." And with that, the boy decided he'd stick to biology textbooks for his next lesson.